75 years on, the country remembers VE Day, the end of World War II in Europe. The Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall lead the commemorations, laying wreaths at Balmoral. A 2-minute silence is observed around the country to honour the men and women who gave their lives during 6 years of war. Large gatherings like those of 1945 have been cancelled because of the coronavirus lockdown, but the day is being marked in other ways. Some communities are still managing to hold socially distanced celebrations.
It's amazing what can happen in these situations. Creativity can burst out.
In London and the South East, from Capel-le-Fern to Biggin Hill, communities fall silent to mark the 75th anniversary of VE Day. Wartime stories told by residents of the Royal British Legion Village in Kent.
A 2-minute silence has been held across the United Kingdom to commemorate the 75th anniversary of VE Day. Events are taking place all day, but public gatherings have been cancelled as the country remains in lockdown because of coronavirus. Victory in Europe Day marks the day in 1945 when Britain and its allies accepted the unconditional surrender of Nazi Germany, bringing the war in Europe to an end. The Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall led the silence from Balmoral, and the Queen will address the nation this evening. Our first report is from our royal correspondent, Nicholas Witchell.
In streets largely deserted due to the lockdown, Britain remembered and gave thanks for the day when the Second World War in Europe came to an end. The nation's tribute was led by the Prince of Wales with the Duchess of Cornwall at the War Memorial on the Balmoral estate. A cannon at Edinburgh Castle marked the start of the 2-minute silence and carefully managed moments of remembrance across the nation. At Balmoral, as the silence ended, the Prince of Wales laid his wreath in tribute to the Second World War generation which overcame the tyranny of Nazi Germany. The cost had been high. Nearly 400,000 members of Britain's armed services lost their lives in the Second World War, and a further 60,000 civilians. Over the White Cliffs near Dover, 2 Spitfires, the wartime fighter aircraft which played such a key role in the defence of Britain, flying today in remembrance of the few, linking the communities over which they flew with the events of 75 years ago.
Keeping watch is a man who led Englishmen to victory against an earlier tyrant. His column stands at the very centre of the great British Commonwealth of Nations. Crowds swirled below him in a riot of rejoicing by day and night.
On this day in 1945, many tens of thousands of people took to the streets in joyous celebration that the war in Europe was over. The contrast with those same streets today is striking. Mass commemorations have been made impossible, but the nation's remembrance has been made all the more poignant by the coronavirus losses.
All of us who were born since 1945 are acutely conscious that we owe everything we most value to the generation who won the Second World War.
And we remember the millions of people from across the United Kingdom and from across the world who came together in World War II to fight for our shared values. Values of freedom, of democracy, of peace.
75 years after the end of the Second World War, a nation in lockdown looked beyond its present challenges to give thanks. Thanks which will be expressed tonight in a special broadcast by the Queen. Nicholas Witchell, BBC News.
Well, as we say, events are planned throughout the UK today, but the commemorations are taking a different tone, with large gatherings cancelled because of the coronavirus pandemic and people urged to celebrate at home.